Hi, I'm Ken,
And I'm Yasmin.
and
And
this
this
is
is
Conversations
Conversations
with
with
Ken
Ken
and
and
Yasmin.
Yasmin.
Hey, Yasmin, how you doing?
I'm well, Ken. Nice to see you. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's just nice to be back doing these again. It's been a while, but I'm happy to be back.
It has been a while, but I think that's due to our very exciting projects that have emerged for both of us.
Yes. Because now I'm at a point where I can finally talk about this because we have an IMDb page for it. Since the end of July, I've been working on this documentary for TRISH, which is a Translational Institute for Space Research. So this documentary that we're working on is to see if human beings could actually survive the trip to Mars and back and beyond. We're trying to get back to the moon in 2024. Well, it was 2024, now it's 2025. And seeing what happens if it's even possible for human beings to survive in space for long duration flights. It's been extremely interesting. Mainly because I'm a space nerd. So being able to be at Space Center Houston, getting a chance to film in Space Center Houston when basically the general audience was gone, meeting some very brilliant and innovative scientists, learning about things that I've always known about, but like in detail, like the human microbiome, if you're not familiar with that, is this whole family of bacteria that live on human beings that actually have been with us since the beginning of time. We have as many organisms living on our bodies and in us as there are stars in the galaxy, and they're all connected to where we are. So if you take this microbiome and a human being goes into space where everything's sterile, can they survive? Because it's been such a part of our DNA since the beginning of our evolution. So it's been very, very interesting. It's kind of heady to talk about, but I learned a lot just as an editor and piquing my interest in space. But most of the interviews were done on Zoom. So doing this show and editing the show helped me tremendously when we actually got to filming some of these astronauts. Victor Glover, who's an African-American astronaut who was actually in the process of training people to go on a flight. I can't wait until we actually get to the next stage. This one that we just finished is specifically for Congress and NASA, because TRISH is an institution out of Baylor College of Medicine that works with NASA. So it's kind of like we're sending this to show what TRISH does and why they're needed.
It sounds very exciting. And is there a possibility of a follow-up documentary after this?
Well, there's a possibility. I mean, I think right now we see if we can get the funding. That's what this next step is for. And then we're going to probably start editing a much bigger project, because we were in Houston and we shot, I think, 34 interviews in a week. And then we came back here, and in October, the early part of October, we shot 5 more interviews. So we interviewed a lot of astronauts, a lot of scientists, a lot of innovators. About 2/3 of them were in Zoom, and then the other third were people in person. So we've got enough footage to do probably like about 12 of these. I'm really excited about the prospects of what this could do.
Right.
Just bringing science to a general audience and having people understand, why it's important for us to go to space,
Right.
understanding that Earth is a limited ecosystem. And if we're not really careful about the resources that we're consuming here, we're going to need to go other places if we want the species to survive.
Do you feel that space travel is taking on a touristic hue now with I don't want to say space tourism, but
well, it has to be
branching away from what it should be?
No, the space tourism has to happen, because the amount of money it would take just to get enough people to go up into space with different health conditions and things would cost billions upon billions of dollars that the government would have to pay for. So having these space tourists go up, even if it's for a minor short duration flight, we can get to see what happens if somebody has like diabetes, or if they have some type of heart condition, and what weightlessness does to the body. So it's a good thing when it comes to that. I think a lot of people are confused about how come we're not spending this money here, and realizing if you know how little of the national budget goes to NASA, and funding like this, they'd be astonished. It's not that big.
Well, it sounds like your documentary will completely work towards educating people in understanding the value of going into space.
Well, I hope they understand that, the scientific aspect of what it is and what they're doing has benefits for here on Earth. They developed this sonogram machine. It's called the Butterfly IQ. And the Butterfly is a handheld ultrasound device that can give you medical grade readings that can hook up to your smartphone. So the fact that you could actually have an EMT or an ambulance with this handheld device that can give you medical grade ultrasounds if somebody was in a serious injury is amazing, but that only came to development because of space science.
That's valuable. Okay, well, if that's the message that needs to get out to the public.
Yes, and I'm hopefully that, when we get to the point of getting to this next step with NASA and Congress, and hopefully we can agree to have some of them fund it, we'll be able to branch this out into the general public. There are a lot of documentaries out there now talking about it, but I think we have a unique take because we talk to specific people that historically have been linked to space research as far as scientists and astronauts that are working on new innovations, because that's what Trish does, works on understanding what new science needs to be created in order for this to happen rather than what's already happened and the possibilities. We're talking to the people that are actually working to make this happen. And there's some amazing stuff that I didn't even think was possible. I mean, physically possible from the scientific aspect of it being possible, and seeing how they're trying to make this come to fruition was amazing.
Is it possible that your documentary will be for streaming to a wider audience, or how do you foresee
it's
this?
too early. It's too early to tell. Right now, it's like I'm trying to take things as I get older, day by day, moment by moment. Right now, what's on the table is finishing this so we can have Congress and NASA look at it. Then hopefully after that, we can move into another direction. Hopefully I can take about a month off and free my brain of looking at scientists and Zoom interviews from other people that aren't as wonderful as you. And just enjoying myself for a little bit so I can go back into it fresh. Because the hardest thing about this was to do a documentary of this size, you would have a whole team behind you.
Right.
You would have like assistant editors that be pulling certain things. You would have a person doing motion graphics. You would have a person composing the music, and all of that was me. So the good thing about it is I got really connected back to things that I like to do, like writing music and things I haven't done in a while, and learning new things and dealing with motion graphics. But it's a lot for one person to take on.
It sounds like you grew as an artist and learned a lot.
Yes, it was extremely challenging because, I've been editing since I was 14 years old. And so I was editing when we were using actual film. And then we had a closed circuit television station in my high school, so I edited digitally. But then when I was in college at NYU, we were using film again. So jumping into digital editing is something that I've always done, but it's always been because it's been a necessity. It's always been because somebody had an editor, their editor did some, let's just say, not the best moral thing that editors have a tendency to do. And they needed somebody to fix a project. And that's ended up how I got this project. Was they had an editor that was working on a project for something else that I did. They needed an editor to fix it. I came in and fixed it. And then the executive producer of that asked me to edit this because of what I was able to do with the other project.
I think the lesson from this experience is that you can never stop learning and growing as a person, as an artist, in anything that you do, and you just get better and better with practice.
Yeah, I mean, you find those challenges that you don't think, or challenges that you think you've mastered something. I mean, it's like I've been editing for so long and I've been doing lots of different things. Like the other job that I had when I was editing 75 short films a year that little kids had made. Right. And understanding the challenges of taking a child who doesn't want to write because they find it boring. And then they're making stuff off the top of their head and then editing that together. Editing my friend's web series, in which it was all improv. So depending on the strength of the improv, it would depend on where the story would go. Because sometimes they would forget or change, then try to mold that into something, which is very similar to documentary filmmaking because you can have an idea, but you never know what you're going to get until you get the information out of the mouths of the people that you're interviewing. So
Well,
it's very similar to like this show. It's like we interview people, we
Right.
can't predict what they're going to say
mhm.
until they say it, and then we have to mold it from there. So that was the beauty. It was like on a different scale, but it was the same process. It was the same degree of attention that I paid from doing this show.
Well, congratulations. I can't wait to see it.
Well, thank you. I can't wait for the world to see it. Hopefully that will happen within the next year.
Of course, of course. Well, that's why we haven't been able to converse like we are doing so today, because you have been engaged in a very exciting project, as I have as well.
Yes.
So I understand.
Yeah.
I
And
under-
let's talk about the projects that you were doing during this time.
Well, it's just like how things serendipitously occur to you. They come to you, but not yes and no. That it's serendipitous. It's not out of nowhere. It's out of working and practicing your craft and doing your art. Well, CB Davies and I worked together again, and he actually brought After Rome to life before a live theater audience in Jerusalem at the Khan Theater, and had a great run and had a very engaged audience and interesting talkbacks. And to have my play performed in Jerusalem was a dream come true. It's, to me, so exciting. And I'm so blessed to have worked with CB again and his wonderful actors and Daniel and his wife Dina, the team. It was just wonderful. So it's all come to fruition after our collaborative experiences on Zoom, beginning with at the height of the pandemic, and then having him on our show and discussing our wish lists for collaboration, and it came true. So that was a wonderful gift, as was The War Zone Is My Bed, which you know very well.
Yes.
Very well. Was also produced before a live audience in Calcutta, India, in February as well. So 2 of my plays performed in 2 countries and in fabulous, interesting cities. So I was very pleased with that. That was directed by Professor Santanu Das, and he's had a great team as well. So again, to have your work performed before a live audience is a gift. So I was very, very pleased and blessed and just very glad to be a working writer. So
Sure.
it was
Yes,
great.
but that's not all.
No, so
That's not all.
it's so funny because, despite the upheaval of 2022 that we're seeing right now, and I know it's been a painful year for so many. The start of it, January 1st, was a birthday for me, as you know. That was the beginning of a very important year, and some may approach it with some trepidation. And the celebratory plans of travel did not pan out due to Omicron. And then the small event that I was going to host in Manhattan did not pan out either, also due to Omicron. So I said, I'll accept it. That's fine. I'll just sit back and just be. And I was approached by 201 Magazine here and included in their February Arts issue, which was an honor. And what was indeed a great surprise was appearing on their cover, being selected to be on their cover. So it's been a good beginning of the year for me, creatively, professionally, personally. So I'm filled with gratitude, and I'm humbled, and I just want to continue doing good work.
Yeah.
Inspired, so
Yeah.
as you are through your
Yes.
work. I think that's what these episodes in life do for us. They serve as inspiration to do more.
Right.
To be
It keeps
better.
your mind open to other things. Because like even within this short period of time, I was able to take a week off to do lighting design for the Willie Agee Theater in Inglewood for a new play, and getting around people that I haven't seen in a while, because doing sound design, lighting design, they got a new professional board. So I was teaching people like how to run that. So it was good, to be back amongst people that I've worked with before. Also on top of that, which was great, was there's this whole collective group of African-American artists that are kind of working together that I would not have known about if it wasn't for doing this play.
Isn't it interesting, Ken, at this point in our lives, and you and I have both worked our whole professional lives on our craft, working
Right.
in the industry, working, to have these opportunities still present themselves to us, and to be in a place where you can learn more, can do more, and can grow more.
Yeah.
And I think it's just preparation, always doing your work, being prepared, being ready to go, and being open
Yeah.
to these.
Because it's one of those things that I had to make sure that the time that I was doing this, because I had to basically step away from the editing project for a week to do lights for this show, and knowing that it was a new work and it was a premiere, and just dealing with the lighting aspect of things, and knowing that they were getting a new board into a place that probably couldn't handle the board that it had. I mean, the board was too big for the theater, and running into a little bit of issues that happened that I had to go back and think about what happened when I first set up a theater's board like new, and things that I had to do with adapters and things like that. But it ended up turning out really, really well. Getting to see some things that now the theater can expand to what it used to do. So that was nice. And it was just kind of nice to be around other people, because, everything is like, most of the work that I had doing theater was gone during the whole, this whole time. So it was nice to actually get a chance to work in theater again. And then at the same time, what probably was one of my biggest inspirations during this time is when I got to see your brother, James, do the band's visit out here at the Dolby Theater. I hadn't been into a large theater in such a long time, and I'm so used to working in smaller theaters, because you have a tendency to do a lot more work if you work in smaller theaters than you do big theaters.
A lot of new work.
Yes, and even though the money is different, grossly different, it was nice to just come in as an audience member and seeing James perform. It was a wonderful performance. It was an amazing performance. I love the fact that being able just to see him on stage, and the tickets that he got me were really, really nice. So I could see just
so glad.
But the thing that was interesting was, this is the first time I've been in a space that big with that many people.
Right.
So we were all wearing masks. And at first I thought it was, we're socially distancing, so every other seat is going to be free. And then no, it was just LA people that do what LA people do, which is show up like right at when the overture is playing, is when they start packing in. So you're packed like sardines in there. But after the first 10 minutes, I was able to relax and just really enjoy the show.
I'm so glad. I'm so proud of him as well, because I saw him perform on Broadway when the show was on Broadway, and that was so exciting, and I was so happy for him, because that's another dream, and he worked so hard to get to this point, and is enjoying himself so much. And unfortunately, the only communication I have with him right now is through Instagram. But I get to follow him on his wonderful journeys throughout the United States, playing in fabulous historical theaters, seeing everything, doing everything in these cities, and just taking his followers on this journey. So I'm so glad you spent time.
We got to hang out for a while afterwards, which was beautiful. And it reminded me just so much about our friendship, our connection and everything. And then knowing how it was just to sit back. Because the thing about it was knowing him kind of like when he was a young lad, a teenager, so to speak, and seeing him as an adult now. And it was just nice to just kind of hang for a couple of hours in the midst of everything.
Yeah.
Kind of in full circle. So it really warmed my heart, especially at the time. There was so much stuff going on, and I just needed to take a break, to just clear my head and take a breather.
Well, I know he enjoyed it as well. And it's so interesting you brought up smaller theaters versus larger theaters, and you were talking about boards, and I think you were talking about lighting boards or sound boards. Okay. Well, you made me think of another a project I'm engaged in right now, which is something that I put out into the universe that I was ready to do, and that was to join a board of directors. And I'm very pleased to say that I have. I was invited to join the Storytelling Arts Board, which is an arts organization here. It's my first experience being on a board of directors. I know you've done it many times with many different organizations. I didn't feel ready up until this point in my career and in my life. So I want to be an active board member and take with me my experience and contribute to bring storytelling to all different pockets of life and education and community. And so it's very exciting for me and something very new. So again, I'm learning, I'm growing, and there's a lot for me to learn actually from this experience.
Yeah, the thing that's great about being a member of the board of directors, especially for the few times that I've done it, has been dealing with the personalities on the board.
Right.
Understanding the strengths and weaknesses that you have versus the strengths and weaknesses as a board. It becomes like an organism that works together to try and reach the same goals.
Yes.
And within that, you'll have certain pockets of just getting to see how certain people do things, and understanding how they're able to do what they do. Like for me, when it came to actually putting together programming and dealing with the educational aspect of things and writing grants, I was great with that. When it came to fundraising, as far as reaching out to people and everything, as far as that was not my strength. That was not my strength. My strength was basically creating the presentation they would give to somebody and make them go like, oh, this is a beautiful presentation.
Right.
The way that it's laid out and the way, basically, dealing with desktop publishing and breaking down with copywriting and making sure that the presentation looked as clean, as professional as possible. And that was where my strength was. And then being able to look at the numbers when it came down, because if you've ever filled out a grant, they're not the easiest thing to do in the world. One misplaced comma could be the difference between you getting the money or not. Right. But being able to focus on those specific elements. But the beautiful thing about it is you start learning skills that you didn't know that you had by working with people that have been doing this and had all this experience years and years upon it, that kind of like help you guide yourself through that pathway and help you do other things that you want to do.
I'm excited about this experience. I'm excited about learning more. And again, being actively participating on this board and doing really good work and making a difference, making an impact.
Yeah.
So
cool.
I'm hoping that this work, not just my work on this board, but the works of other people and other board members and other organizations can sustain smaller theaters in the city, because it's opening up, it's open, people are flocking back to Broadway, but you're hoping that people can also have room in their hearts and in their pockets
right.
to see off Broadway and off Broadway, because that sustains the new voices, that leads to more theater that can reach more people and work. And I understand people have to make choices now financially about how they can spend their money and what they can devote their time to when they're not working. But I just hope that off Broadway and off Broadway and smaller theaters around the country can sustain.
Yeah, I'm hoping that we don't lose those voices that don't have the financial means to do things. Because right now, with the way that everything's going, it seems like it's going to start off with the people that have the money that they can lose to do a production, are going to be the ones that are doing productions for a while, rather than the voice that needs to support out there. And I'm hoping that we can wave through this first year of getting through that, because I don't want those voices, especially ones specifically in theater, because with all this time being shut down, I know people have found new ways of getting the voices out there through other mediums.
Yes.
But realizing that, there's still a space of living, breathing theater being that point of communication and community that I don't want to see go away.
No. And you raised a very interesting point about producers and theaters making choices about what will sustain them. And it may not be that new voice. What
we have learned is how to survive with the outreach of social media and other things that you can do to actually promote your work.
Yes.
So the good thing about it, that it's been more cost effective to do things that way. If you can create a nice presentation that can get people interested in your work, and knowing that you have this type of dedication to create this type of marketing material, maybe they'll be willing to invest in you because you can get it out to so many different heads.
Right.
Doing it that rather than just people sitting, in a room waiting for a package to come through the mail.
Yes, yes. We can only hope. Upon reflection of this year thus far, I know it's been full of highs for us creatively and personally and professionally, but there's also been sadness. You lost someone you knew in your life, an artist.
The hardest thing about this is my love-hate relationship with stand-up comedy. I mean, I have a tendency to do it when I can. I mean, it's always been one of those things that I have to do it. It's always one of my skills that I say I've got to do it all the time. So there was a point in time when I was a regular at the Hollywood Improv. Mm-hmm. And I used to run into a lot of people. And Bob Saget was one of those people that really was extremely supportive. I wouldn't call him a friend as much as an acquaintance. It was one of those things that he would recognize my face if he saw me outside of any of the comedy places here, which was always a beautiful thing. But it was also understanding that relationship of support was so unique, you think, until you start hearing the stories after his passing, how he was with everybody, and his generosity and his heart. And knowing that sometimes, like this was many, many years ago when I was like doing as a comic, you can go into comedy shows most of the time for free if they know you. So if I was on a date and I brought a date to a comedy show, which by the way, you probably shouldn't do unless that relationship is solid. Bring it to a comedy show.
Really? Did you really do that?
No, I mean, there was a girl that I was dating at the time that I took to a show because I knew Bob was performing.
But were you performing?
No, I wasn't performing at the show, but we had performed in the show like a couple of weeks before. So I knew he was performing. So I showed up because she was like, oh, he's Bob Saget, he's from Full House. And she didn't know what his comedy was like.
No, a lot of people didn't.
Yeah, so she had no idea what his comedy was like. And then, so he sees me, and then we start, riffing on each other from the audience. And she's completely horrified because he's making up stories that are just twisted. And she's sitting there with her mouth gaped open, just in complete terror and horror. So she got to meet him afterwards, and he apologized. He was joking around, and we were talking about other things. And there were times when I would get, have disagreements with comedy place owners. I won't mention their names now. And Bob would, if he was there, would like take me up to the where the comics hang out and just sit back there. I think we did like about 4 or 5 shows together. Oh. And there were times when he was on the show at night and I was in the show either after or before him. We'd run into each other. We'd sit at the bar. He helped me out with a lot of just making sure that I was okay. And there's a point in time where we were like, how's your act doing? He's like, how are you? How are you? You doing okay? How's your family? Are you doing all right? And things like that.
That's so, to take, to reach out to a younger, newer comic like that. I mean, and was that impressive to you that he would do that?
It was, well, I mean, I've known other comics that have done that, but the thing with him is that it always felt genuine.
Right. That's
and there's a certain point in time when you get to see somebody, it's completely different when you're hanging out at the bar with the general public than when you're hanging out in the areas that are specifically blocked off for comics. And that's where you can really allow yourself to drop down the guard that you have in front of people. But what I saw him do is that guard was, when he dropped down the guard and when he had it up, wasn't that much of a difference. He loved his fans that knew him from Full House and America's Funniest Videos. He loved his fans that knew him from Half Baked. He loved his fans that knew him from his comedy. And it was interesting always, whenever you saw a show, for people that had no idea what his comedy was like, would show up to his shows. And then you sit back going like, are they going to fight through or are they going to walk out, whatever's going to happen? Because it was always a wild ride with him. And he taught me a lot about just being present on stage with an audience. Basically, don't be a master to material to the point where you're not really connecting. And that would always happen when I hadn't done stand-up in a couple of years and I would come back. So I just did a show recently, and as I walked into the show, it was hard not to hear that positive voice in the back of my head of him telling me stuff. And points of times I was driving around and I would hear some twisted thing he told me like in my ear before I was going on stage, or something that we did to some other comic we were joking around. It was just one of those things about knowing what type of heart he had, knowing what type of person he was for me and my connection that I had to him, and getting to see his generosity. And now these are stories about so much that he did for other peoples and other organizations that's starting to come out. So yeah, I'll always miss him, because it was always most times I would go to a comic show, like a bigger place, and going like, is he going to be there? Is he going to show up? Is he going to sit back there? I'm going to hear somebody cuss me out from across the room and look around and it'd be Bob.
Oh, wow. At least you had that experience with him. So
yeah. And the thing about it is knowing that I wasn't alone. That actually brings comfort.
yeah.
There's so many comics that said, Bob helped me out at a difficult time. Bob sat down with me after I had a bad set when I was in the show with him, and basically like gave me encouragement. And I've got stories that I'll just keep to myself just because they feel closer to my heart. But yeah, there are days when I would, even when I wasn't doing stand-up, there were times I would think about conversations that we had going like, I really should get back. I really should do this. I know the world's going crazy and everything's just seems like it's upheaval, but if you go and just do an open mic, do a show, enough people that will put you on a show, just do it. And back. So it's kind of nice that now that the documentary is winding down about getting back and doing it, but it's always interesting. It's hard for me not to do a show now and not have Bob like in the back of my head pushing me. Sometimes pushing me in the wrong direction, pushing me to say stuff that stuff I would normally say anyhow, but stuff that I would be a little bit more, not say shock, but being a little bit, putting the visual in people's heads a little bit more than I normally would. Because sometimes I like to pull my punches in front of an audience and just go like, yeah, that's enough. They don't need to go that dark into my head. And then now I've been like, no, let them go that dark. They can play, they can leave. And just having confidence in what I want to say. So yeah. Yeah, I know the world lost a major, major loving force, but his love is still here. I mean, the people that he touched are still sending it, which is a beautiful thing. So the thing that's been interesting about in this time that we've been not doing shows, and I started thinking about last year, and I started thinking about the people that we interviewed, some of the guests, and I always go back to Dennis.
Oh yeah.
And the reason that I go back to Dennis is because what this editing job has afforded me to do was to buy myself a camera that is a little bit higher end, and I've been just taking pictures when I want to relax. And getting back to some of the exercises and stuff that he was telling that he would give to his students, I've been doing them for myself and seeing what's happening. A couple times I've been dog sitting for people, and I've had my camera with me and taking pictures of their dog and then sending it to them. Like, oh my God, I can print this out. And yes, because getting a dog to stay still for a point in time to take a picture can be a task. If I'm either using my iPhone or I'm using my Lumix camera, just really pushing myself to keep pushing those visual skills, because I haven't been able to really write, because video editing and writing don't mix well. I've learned that for a while. So I'm giving myself some time to separate myself when I want to write something. But getting out and basically telling stories with the camera with visuals is something that I've been like trying to do. I try and practice, at least take my camera out at least once or twice a week. Just like that. But I was thinking about that interview going like, I really need to see what I can capture, like stand in this one spot for like 15 minutes, see what type of stories I can tell. And then I would take that and come home and seeing if like visually, what did I capture? If this was the opening image of a movie, what would it be? And that's an exercise I used to give my students anyhow. I give them 3 unrelated pictures and have them the story saying, this is the opening image of a movie. This is the climactic image of a movie. This is the final image of a movie. They'd be 3 unrelated pictures and force them to write a story based on those images. So when I
tell him that, I will share that with him when I see him.
Yeah. So it's like doing that stuff for myself for stuff that I've captured, even though I know the story behind the picture, but what is my eye drawn to with the image that I've taken? And that's been kind of nice. It's really freed my head up from sitting in front of a computer and editing all that.
May I share with you someone who's still with me in my thoughts and in my awareness was your dear friend, Joan Price. And I know she's still doing fabulous work and she's still out there. I just think her vivacity, her love of life, her whole testimony about age and love and process and being has stayed with me and it has influenced me and has been, that was a really joyful experience for me. Just being with her and thank you for introducing us.
She's an amazing woman, and understanding the challenges that she's gone through to get to where she is. And still, if you follow her on Twitter, Joan just will let you know how she feels about certain things in a way that is kind of disarming and yet poignant at the same time. I'm so happy that I was, when I think about how I got to meet Joan and still being friends with her and how amazing it is, and just the respect that I have for her, it's a beautiful thing. So I'm glad that I was able to bring her on the show.
Thank you. There's a line that stays with me that she said that I just I would go back to our interview and just play that line when I say, what do you say to people? Meaning maybe me at that time, when you think about yourself at a younger age, or you look at a picture of yourself when you were younger and you are nostalgic for that person and how you looked and how you were. And you know what she said? Remember what she said? She said, you were never happy. That was never.
Yeah. And it's kind of like you think about that. And it's like, we have selective memory when it comes to that. We selective memory, because I think about that all the time. Yeah, because there are moments in which I think about just the techniques as far as her dealing with relationships for people that are stuck in their ways because they've been doing things for a certain way for so long.
Yeah.
And the way that you can break some of those things down is about, this is a new experience. You need to approach it as new. Joan's always been an inspiration for me.
I'd love to have her on again.
Yeah. We'll definitely check into that. And then I also have some friends of mine from when I was at Howard that I've been doing some things I'm going to try and reach out to as well.
Great.
Yeah, I'm basically I've got 2 more, maybe a week and a half left. And then I'm going to probably go to Atlanta and visit my parents for a little bit, then come back fresh and be ready to work. So I'm looking forward to this next year. I look forward to working with you as we start season 3, even though it's been 2 years. But like I said, we're like American Idol. We have a budget. I'm looking forward to that, and just really wanting to make those connections. Talking a couple of different art forms. Like I've been sketching a lot more and drawing, and seeing there are certain people I could reach out to for that. Just bringing people like a new way of creating art in this ever-changing world that's positive and can be helpful.
I look forward to that, and I look forward to our conversations talking about that.
Definitely. So we'll be back soon.
Yes, we will.
We'll let you know when we will be back. But thank you for staying with us as long as you have, and tell your friends.
Yeah, why not? Maybe they can come on the show.
Yes.
Okay, Ken, I'll see you soon.
All right, Yasmine, take care.
Bye.
Until next time. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, completely. Do you want to do until next time, or you want to do until next time at the end?
No, let's do it.
Okay.
I'm learning my lesson.
Okay, I'll have you start.